The Art of Storytelling, and right now we're going to look at the elements of story, character and plot, and all those interesting things that really connect with your audience. So, if I had to start by talking about elements of story, I wanted to share this idea with you because I always like to go and look at a list first or try and find something that is a departure point for good storytelling in this instance. And the idea really is to start by looking at some thoughts around digital storytelling and what people think is trendy right now. This is something I found from the Center of Digital Storytelling in Berkeley, and they say a fresh point of view is really good to start with. Dramatic question that will arrest the attention. Emotional, I like arrest, there's that word again. Emotional perspective that connects. And this is really something that's quite interesting. As a speaker, your own angle that you bring to it is what is going to bring that emotional connection. A story that is relative or relatable because it's something of your own voice that you put into it. And then, as we say, the storyteller's voice, look at the economy, don't have too many words, don't make it too heavy. And finally, also, look at the pacing because you want to make sure that the rhythm of the piece is right. I'm trying to get you to the slide again, but it doesn't want to go. There we go. So you look at the pacing as well, which is that rhythm. Now, if we go and look at the idea of story, in a classic sense, of course, story is really all about plot on the one end and character on the other side. And if you try and break that down, you get to plot, which is what happens, and the character is who this happens to. So what happens is the main events in a sequence, the momentum moving forward. Plot is always moving forward. It's always taking you somewhere, and it's always letting the next button fall, letting the next idea fall, and moving the story forward. And characters are the ones who are the heroes. You have the protagonist, you have an antagonist, and then you have this balance, fine balance of empathy that goes between the protagonist and antagonist. And we're going to talk a lot about that later tonight, because that is, I think, a really great opportunity to figure out when you tell stories how you're going to make that connection with your audience and how you're going to pull them in slowly and get them emotionally involved, because that is really when the thing starts happening in a magical way. Now, there's another slide that I want to show you, and this is really, see if you can imagine who said this. This is a list of the best plot and characters benefits and how you can make it work. And if you can tell what that lamp's from and where it's from, I bet you thought that it's Pixar. It's from the Great Storytelling Rules by Pixar, and they say best plot and character are universal, have clear structure and purpose, and appeal to our deepest emotions. They are surprising and unexpected always, and simple and focused stories, plots and characters are really the things that make a serious connection and pull your audience in. And if you go and look at this kind of list and you find it in every one of those Pixar movies, you know that these guys are doing it right. Now, beside those two, which are obviously essential elements, what else would there be beyond character and plot? Well, I think something else that's really important is to work with the setting that you're in, the kind of conflict. Now, conflict is that incredible thing that leads up all the time to the finale, to that climax at the end, and of course your resolution, which you want to be sure is appropriate to the story, appropriate to the audience, and it's very important to solve all of the conflicts by the end of the story, because you want to avoid that thing, as Sid Field calls milk and cookie moment. You want to be sure that audience doesn't go away and 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later over a cup of coffee, or worse, even in the middle of the night, suddenly realize that there were loose ends, because nothing can be more irritating than that. So you want a story to land before the next one starts, before the next one pops up and gets going as well. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about themes, and when I started looking at themes, I wanted to demonstrate how in Hollywood they use ideas around theme to describe a particular flavor that a movie would sit in. So, for example, if you're going to work with a comedy and you have a character that's kind of awkward or something, the saying in Hollywood is really to say it's a fish out of water comedy. So here's an image of a fish out of water comedy, and what was really interesting was when I started looking at pictures of a fish and wanted to have an image of a fish out of water, is actually not that funny. In fact, most of the images you can find online are fish caught up in plastic and kind of really unfunny stuff. And it's interesting to me that that was kind of the image that they use in Hollywood as a comedy particularly a story that is about a character that's awkward. But you can see how this concept works. Now, if you start thinking about your concept and you start looking at themes, these are possible ideas that you can look at when you start to build a theme for a story. So there's the underdog. We're going to talk a lot more about the underdog because there's a really fantastic connection. There's quest or journeys. Those are incredible. There's rags to riches stories. There are comedies, straight on comedy. There's tragedy, and then there's rebirth or reinvention stories. Stories that really talk about something that is inspirational and so that's also a very popular one. Whichever theme you choose as a little experiment to go and tell a story or to build a story around that is related to your specific product, to your specific service you're going to work with, you also want to keep in mind the hero. Now, of course, it's a good idea to say, I'm going to tell a story and create a hero that is my product, or a hero that uses my product, because then things are going to happen for them. It's going to demonstrate stuff. And those are sort of the more surfacey, obvious ones. But I also think it's important to see if you can make your audience the hero as well. Because if we can make the audience feel, and we're going to talk a lot about that, we can really reach them and we can really emotionally connect. And the moment that we connect emotionally, wonderful things start to happen. So I'm going to start getting us into the space of how do we connect, how do we get that emotion going. But in this section, if there was one thing I can pin for you, then it would be to say what it is that people remember. They remember how you made them feel.